Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. Today we will discuss about the plight of Uighur Muslims in China. Uighur Muslims are Turkic-speaking people who inhabit the Xinjiang region in northwest China. The ethnic community describes the region as East Turkestan and has been striving for freedom from China for decades. It has been facing extreme atrocities at the hands of Chinese authorities. According to estimates, at least 1 million male members of the community are currently lodged in detention camps in China, and female members are regularly subjected to sexual abuse by the Chinese authorities. We will discuss these aspects in the agenda today with a top leader of the community. We have with us Mr. Salih Uighur, the Prime Minister of East Turkestan government in exile. He is joining us straight from Washington, where he is living in exile. But before we start the discussion, let us have a look at this report.
In China, millions of Uighur Muslims are facing extreme human rights abuse at the hands of authorities. Uighur Muslims are Turkic-speaking people who inhabit in the Xinjiang region in northwest China. The ethnic community describes the region of East Turkestan, which was occupied by China in 1949. The Uighurs have been demanding freedom from China, and in turn Chinese authorities have unleashed terror and torture on them. According to journalists, researchers and victims, the community members are facing arbitrary arrest and are subjected to forced labor and violence while being denied permission to practice their religion. Some recent reports said that the authorities had destroyed mosques of Uighurs and seized the Islamic holy book, Quran, besides banning fasting during the holy month of Ramzan. According to reports, over 1 million male members of ethnic community are currently lodged in detention camps, which are like concentration camps of the Nazi Germany. Increasing in number and size, the illegally held inmates are tortured and subjected to political indoctrination and forced labor. Female members of Uighur community are subjected to sexual abuse by the Chinese authorities. Reports which trickle out of China say that the Uighur men are being forcefully sterilized by the authorities with an aim of finishing the race. The Uighurs termed the atrocities being committed on them as genocide and want the international community to step in to support them against China. But ironically, the Islamic world has been silent on the repression being faced by Uighur Muslims. Pakistan particularly, which claims to be a champion of Muslims around the world and keeps talking about Muslims of Kashmir, has been claiming that no wrong is being done to the Uighur Muslims. Analysts say Pakistan is refraining from commenting because of heavy dependence on China for financial resources. The US has been speaking against atrocities committed against Uighurs, but has been stopping short of taking any significant concrete action against China over this issue. In Canada, a parliamentary committee recently urged the Canadian government to condemn Chinese policies against the Uighurs, which is said to include mass detention, forced labor, pervasive state surveillance and population control. It also called for imposing sanctions against all Chinese government officials involved. There are also rising demands for sanctioning imports of certain items from China, which are suspected to be made through forced labors in detention camps. The awareness in the international community about the problem is growing, but more needs to be done to save oppressed Uighurs. Bureau Report.
Now let's welcome our special guest, the Prime Minister of East Turkestan, Mr. Salih Uighur. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. So, let us begin by asking you about the condition of Uyghur Muslims. Please explain to us what are they undergoing?
So as you mentioned, right now over 3 million Uighurs and other Turkish peoples are locked up in concentration camps and are being used as slave labor. Those outside the concentration camps are under a constant surveillance state. They are being subject to constant surveillance, harassment by the Chinese state. Uyghur women are being forcibly sterilized. Over 500,000 Uyghur children have been separated from their families and sent to state-run orphanages and boarding schools to be raised as loyal Chinese citizens.
Okay, when we talk about atrocities, I mean the oppression being faced by the community in China, do you think there is enough awareness in the world about this issue, and how serious is the world taking this issue?
Slowly there is awareness that is being raised. The international community, is really slowly recognizing that the issue is that the atrocities that is happening in Turkestan is a genocide. This past week, the Canadian Parliament recognized the atrocities officially as a genocide. And essentially that's what's been happening. The atrocities have been ongoing for nearly 71 years since China invaded and occupied East Turkestan back in 1949.
As you mentioned about 1 million people being in concentration camps, those are little details that come out of China because of the control that China has enforced. So, do you think the actual picture could be worse and there could be bigger problems being faced by Uyghurs?
Yes, the Chinese government has been engaging for the past 71 years colonization and occupation. This is the reason why the genocide is occurring. The Chinese government wants to essentially eradicate every essence of not only just of our identity but also our physical existence. That's why you have millions of people being thrown into camps, tens of thousands, being killed for their organs, over 36 million people being forced to, undergo DNA collection. And this is why the Chinese government is forcibly sterilizing our population. They're forcing Uyghur and Turkish women to marry Chinese men. And essentially, people are dying in these concentration camps and in these prisons. The Chinese government wants to ensure that, either that we are fully assimilated to where we, are no longer a different people, or we are fully eradicated to ensure that China's, Belt and Road Initiative and its Chinese dream are fulfilled.
So, since we know about the genocide and China is not allowing the real picture to come out, do you think there should be a UN monitored visit or UN sponsored visit to these Xinjiang province to understand the real problem or the real situation there?
I don't think the international community still really understands the situation on the ground as to the way that we understand it. I think many governments actually understand it to a certain extent, but as far as like the average people, I think they need to, get more awareness. I think the United Nations needs to visit East Turkestan, and other organizations that are outside of the United Nations need to do a deep investigation on the ground to reveal what's really going on.
So, when we talk about the UN, we just saw China being elected to the UNHRC despite the genocide it is committing in East Turkestan. So, how do you see that development? China got 130 votes out of 190.
So, effectively, China has able to influence the United Nations in many ways. It has spread corruption through, into the United Nations institutions, and has also spread its, totalitarian ideals. We condemn, China's appointment or a so-called election to the UN Human Rights Council, because it only gives China a green light to further continue its genocide in East Turkestan and its atrocities in Tibet, while also, promoting or encouraging other despotic regimes like Iran, Pakistan, and others to engage in atrocities as well.
Is China using money power to influence UN member countries to get elected?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, China has been using, economic and financial power, be it through physical corruption in terms of bribes of leaders of certain countries, or through other, means to influence them on economically by offering them loans or other incentives like investments into those countries.
So, when we talk about some countries raising voice, we just saw the parliamentary committee in Canada describing what is happening in Xinjiang province as genocide, and now China has reacted angrily. I mean, China is using bullying tactics to suppress such voices. Is that so? Do you agree?
So China is obviously very angry. We welcome the Canadian Parliament's judgment on this. We are very happy that they recognize the atrocities as a genocide, and in fact we encourage other countries to do so. Because at the end of the day, what's happening in East Turkestan is nothing less than a genocide. And the international community has a moral and legal obligation to, put an end to these atrocities. China is going to, push back against anything that the international community does. It's going to accuse them of interfering with its so-called internal affairs. But East Turkestan was never a part of China's internal affairs and never will be a part of China's internal affairs.
So, when we talk about international community, we should talk about Islamic world. Islamic world is also silent on the, Uyghurs are Muslims, and Islamic world is supposed to take care of the interests of Muslims all over the world. If you talk about OIC maybe. So, they are kind of silent. There is no voice emerging from those bodies. How do you see that? What is your comment on that?
So the Muslim world has largely been corrupted. They have been corrupted by the Chinese money, China's economic and political influence. And there's a bunch of hypocrisy, especially when you look at, Pakistan raising the issue of, Kashmir or other places where it's not nearly as bad, but looking at the issue of East Turkestan, they ignore it. In fact, more recently, you had the Pakistani National Security Advisor saying that they're 100% satisfied with what China is doing. So they're 100% satisfied with the genocide of nearly 30 million Uighur and other Turkic Muslims in occupied East Turkestan.
Yeah, in fact, I was coming to Pakistan. In fact, their leader, the Prime Minister Imran Khan, has said in an interview that he is not aware of what's happening in Xinjiang against Uyghurs. So when Pakistan claims to be champion of Muslims, so how do you see that statement?
He said he's fully aware. I mean, according to the interview with his national security advisor.
No, national security advisor said that everything is fine. But before that, the Prime Minister has said in an interview I saw that he says he is not aware of what's happening, but he is aware of what's happening in Kashmir. He is not aware of what's happening in Xinjiang.
No, he's fully aware of what's happening. Even, his national security advisor said that he's fully aware of what's happening. He just, doesn't want to make an official statement. He's just trying to run away from the reality of the question that's being asked. He's just being, hypocritical. He fully knows what's happening. He knows, China is engaging in a genocide. There are Pakistani citizens who have, family members or relatives, family members that are in East Turkestan that are locked up in concentration camps. And just because, they're receiving a lot of money from China, they just want to stay silent on the issue.
There are also reports that Pakistani women are being transported to China or something like this. Do you have some knowledge about those things?
I mean, Pakistan is going down a wrong path by thinking that China is, their friend, and that by believing into China's lies and these promises of investment, they're essentially selling out their own country's future. This is how China occupied East Turkestan 71 years ago by, finding a few corrupt, leaders who within our country who are now, described as traitors to get close, accept Chinese investment, accept Chinese money. And then now 71 years, we are facing, a full-blown genocide to where our people are being wiped out.
So, are you suggesting that China will use the same tactics on Pakistan as it used on East Turkestan?
Absolutely, absolutely. They will use the same tactics on any of these countries that they're investing in right now. Right now, they might, come to you all nice and promise, many great things, use sweet diplomacy tactics to entice you. But at the end of the day, their objective is, colonization, securing, your country's natural resources, your country's, wealth. You see them engaging in colonization, neo-colonialism in the 21st century in Africa. A lot of countries that have been unable to pay back Chinese loans, they put them in a debt trap and took over strategic parts of their country. And they will use these strategic parts, they will colonize them to solely set the base for full control decades from now on. So in Africa, you have, countries like Nigeria, countries like some other African countries. You also have the Maldives, who almost fell for this trap. You have Indonesia that almost fell for this trap. Pakistan itself, through the port of Gwadar and Balochistan, it has sold away its strategic port to China, where China is going to bring 500,000 Chinese to colonize that strategic port, and that's just going to be a part of it. They're going to use that to colonize essentially all of the region in decades from now.
When we talk about the USA, America, it is the most powerful country in the world. But do you think it is doing enough or raising enough voice in the context of Uighur Muslims? Because it has been raising voice, at least in the case of Tibet. There was recently a meeting, Prime Minister of Tibet in exile met State Department officials. So, is America using the same yardstick on the Uyghurs?
America has been, the most vocal country in terms of, the atrocities going on in East Turkestan. We think that in the near future that the United States will offer, the same amount of support that they have shown to the Tibetan community, to the Tibetan government in exile, to the East Turkestan community as well.
Okay, what do you think about India's role or stand?
India, has been, at odds with China. India, officially as a government, has not yet made any official statements or stance against this other than, signing onto a letter, siding with the United States and other countries opposing the atrocities that China is committing in East Turkestan. But India, the people and the government need to, speak out against these atrocities as much as they can. The Indian Parliament should, enact at least some resolutions, hearings on the issue, and do something similar to what the Canadian government did or Parliament did by recognizing the atrocities as a genocide.
Have you had a chance to speak to anybody in the Indian government on this issue?
At the moment, no.
So would you like to speak to somebody in the government of India or to press for raising voice?
Absolutely, absolutely. We would love to reach out to the Indian government and raise this issue and see what ways that we can cooperate, because East Turkestan and India have a long history of economic and cultural exchange for many thousands of years.
So, but why do you think that India has not been speaking publicly about this issue?
Well, right now, India has a lot of, issues with the Chinese. The East Turkestan issue is the most sensitive issue to China, actually. And I think because of previous governments, previous administrations in India's passive, stance toward China, I think the current government is still, fixing a few things and pushing, more harsher, tougher stance on China, and they want to take things, slowly. But I think they need to, publicly come out and speak out against these atrocities and raise this issue in a more direct way.
So, since you talked about the India-China relations right now, which are at a very low because of the Chinese aggression on the border. So, do you think this is the appropriate time that India should speak up and mobilize international community maybe in favor of Uyghurs?
Absolutely, because the threat of China is not going to disappear so long as China occupies East Turkestan and Tibet. The only way to, fully remove this strategic threat that China poses to India is by supporting East Turkestan and Tibet's efforts to regain their independence. India has no border, does not share any border with China at all. But it does share a border with Chinese-occupied East Turkestan and Chinese-occupied Tibet. So if it wants to remove this threat that China poses, and ensure its own strategic, safety, then India needs to, seriously address and support the East Turkestan and Tibetan causes.
So, you are suggesting that it is in India's own interest, strategic interest, if India raises the voice for Uyghurs and Tibetans also. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's in India's own strategic interest, both in the short term and especially in the long term.
So, Mr. Hudiar, I want to ask you, what will be your message for the international community, since they are not paying much attention to this crisis or the genocide?
The international community has a moral and humanitarian, obligation, along with a legal obligation, to uphold its promises of never again. Following the Holocaust, the world had promised never again to let such an atrocity happen. Yet we see it here happening again in the 21st century. And if we ignore what's happening here in East Turkestan today, this will happen in other places elsewhere. The Chinese government, poses a strategic threat and an existential threat to not just, East Turkestan, not just India or, Japan or Taiwan or Hong Kong, but to the entire world. China is trying to seek, global domination and achieve the goal of becoming, the largest military, most powerful military, political, and economic power. And if they're willing to engage in a genocide in the 21st century to achieve this, you bet that they will do this to other peoples as well, including, the very countries that are neighboring, Chinese-occupied East Turkestan and other parts of, China as itself. So the world needs to work in a coordinated effort to push back against this by recognizing the atrocities of the genocide, by taking stronger actions through diplomatic and political means, and to support, East Turkestan and Tibet's efforts to regain their independence.
So, we have heard about the Holocaust of Nazi Germany. So, will you like to compare the situation to that situation?
Yes, in many ways it's very similar to what the Nazis did to the Jews and millions of others. By demonizing them, putting them in concentration camps. But now it's actually a little bit more scary and much worse because the Chinese government is, using modern 21st century technology to engage in this genocide. They are forcibly sterilizing the population. They are, collecting the DNA. They collected the DNA samples of over 36 million people. To our knowledge, we don't know that the Nazis engaged in organ harvesting, but this is something that we do know in the case of China. They are harvesting the organs of Uighurs and other Turkic peoples and selling them to wealthy Muslim, peoples as halal organs and other, ways. The Chinese are using us as slave labor, just like the way that they use the Jews and other, people as slave labor during the Holocaust. So in many ways it's very similar, and in many ways it's a little bit more, worse, especially when you include 21st century technological and the human organ harvesting aspects of it.
So, one last question, we are running out of time. One last question is that how do you think China should be dealt with on this question? Maybe brief comments.
So countries need to break diplomatic contact and economic, contact with China. Countries, no one, especially when they found out about the Holocaust, no country was, engaging in trade or engaging in political and diplomatic relations with China. Similarly, countries need to break all ties with China and push back against China using all means at their disposal.
Okay, thank you. We hope that and wish that you Uyghur people and East Turkish people get justice as early as possible. And thank you so much for giving us your time, valuable time. Thank you so much. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I will be back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.